So we're talking about the realities of starting your own business as a coach or a transformation professional. Let's just jump in and let's talk about what are those realities? What are the realities and what are like the misconceptions that people end up being disillusioned about?
Well, I think right away that phrase you used is starting a business. And I think it's not often conceptualized. Like if you get a coaching certification, you do something to become a life coach, a practitioner of a certain technique. I don't feel like the language you hear, or maybe even in people's thought processes, oh, I'm signing up to become a small business owner. That's not the thought, right? And that's not the marketing. The marketing and the concept around it tends to be, I'm going to become this coach, I'm going to become this practitioner, I'm going to get clients, I'm going to make whatever I make per hour, per session, which is actually not accurate because it's a business. There's startup costs, there's the costs to run your platform. Like if you were to say I'm going to go into business as like I'm going to open a store, I feel like the conceptual model of that is very wide, and it's okay, there's all these things I have to do. I have to learn a little bit about business, I have to understand cost of customer acquisition, all of these things that just are built into the language of I'm going to open my own, store in town. But with coaching and practitioners and things, it's not like that. That's not how it's often thought about, and that is to the detriment of everyone who becomes it and becomes disillusioned, because you're set up to fail if you're not thinking about it in terms of like, oh, I have to learn business on top of getting my certification or whatever skill I'm getting.
Totally, totally. And it's funny because I mean it really is moving from being like an employee mindset to being a CEO. And that's a completely different paradigm. Because when you, I mean, and we all know people who have been coaching for a while, maybe we thought, oh, we're gonna make like, $100 an hour, $150 an hour, and you're thinking about that like from your employee mindset. We're like, okay, if I work this number of hours equals X amount of money. But
Mm-mm.
then we found out coaching isn't quite like, showing up and punching a clock and making some coffee, or even just not just like a job like that, but even just sitting at an office and doing a high-end job. Maybe you have a big salary and you work for a company and you have skills, but it's not the same as like showing up and coaching and being present for people during transformation and working on their deep stuff. And it's like the reality of the amount of hours you're going to work and doing tasks you have to do in addition to coaching ends up being a little different than what we think in the beginning.
Oh, yeah, more than a little different. Yeah. And again, the place this is all coming from is from what I've witnessed, at least, is if you go in with this mindset at the beginning, more of an understanding, then you know what you're signing up for, and then you're set up to have an understanding. Okay, this is going to take time. This is going to be a process. It's going to be worth it. But if you are coming from it like with a false expectation, then you get disappointed, and then all of these people with all of these good skills that they've learned end up not helping people because you're not taught, or there's not a lot going into how you actually get yourself out there, or how people end up working with you. So I feel like it's actually a disservice to over romanticize it. It's not to like say, oh, this is so hard, you shouldn't do it, right? I think I like it. I like the process, and we can get into that. But if you understand what the process is and you know what you're signing up for, then okay, it's 3 months. All I've done is kind of started a website, and all of that is quote unquote unpaid hours, right? Like we don't think of it that way, but it is. You're spending hours on your business that you're not getting paid to like think about your website and build it. But if you have an understanding of that, then you're not like, oh my God, where's the money? Like this isn't working out the way I thought I did. If you think about it more like, okay, I went to college for 4 years for something, if you did, and that's just to even like start. That's before you even start the business. That's just learning the skills. So I think when you have a longer game picture of the whole thing, then you're much more likely to have people feeling just clear and centered around, yeah, this is what it takes. I know what I'm signing up for. And then you're not going to burn out or quit, or worse, which in my opinion, like you just keep spending more money on like certifications and things that maybe increase your skill, but don't teach you business at all.
Yes, that is the biggest trap for sure, is just get another certification, or even not that, but like just buy another course
Hmm.
on XYZ, how to do marketing or something like that, which it's all really relevant information. But I think from my own experience and from clients I work with and people I know is that they're sort of skipping the step of getting really clear, like getting really clear inside themselves about who it is that they're really speaking to,
Hmm.
who they're serving. And you can't skip that step, because if you try to skip that step, it doesn't matter how much you know about marketing or writing copy or social media, but if your message isn't aligned, if your message isn't clear, then it's just not going to land. It's not going to land at all.
Absolutely. And even knowing that there are steps that you're skipping or not, I think is even a big part of it, because it's, you and I have had this conversation. We can kind of get into our own background with like why we're talking about it, or I don't know, I guess feel qualified to talk about it, just because we've gone through it in our own different ways, and we also work with people going through this process. So you see it you see the same themes consistently, right? So we're not just like kind of inventing these ideas, but they come from us talking to people who have sometimes many years of experience in their field, of like they have a lot of skill level with working with people in whatever technique. But the themes are over and over. The idea of like putting myself out there is still fairly abstract, right? And like there are these signposts that people have, like, oh, I'll make a website, or maybe I'll do a YouTube channel. But that's not really a strategy in and of itself, right? Like it's not just, okay, I put a website up and then when I was growing up, I'm a techie guy, which we'll get into, of why YouTube works for me, right? There's a whole reason why it works for me and not other people, and why other things don't work for me. But I was on the internet when I was like 15, when you had to dial an 800 number, and there was no search engines. So there was actually a book called The Internet Yellow Pages. And you would actually like look up, oh, there's a website about this with fractals, like images of fractals. I remember that being like 15. Oh, you can go get a fractal. You had to basically be a programmer almost to use the internet. And it was like, wow, you have a website. That in and of itself was interesting. And so at one point that may have been like, oh, you have a website. But now if you put up a website, there's like, people are putting them up 5 seconds. Every 5 seconds, there's 100 websites going up. So that in and of itself is not inherently a strategy. And we have colleagues that don't have websites that are like full-time coaches, which I'm not a full-time coach, but I'm very techy, so I have some tech things in place. But understanding the mechanism of like, okay, what is the actual process of me going through steps that logically lead to me having a client find me in a place that makes sense to find me, where they actually would find me, right? Like if you just arbitrarily upload a couple YouTube videos, the odds of someone just stumbling upon that, then clicking to your website, then paying you cold, right? It's very unlikely. So there has to be this whole sort of understanding of a process through which I, Evan, can do these steps that logically could lead to someone seeing my work, being interested, and contacting me. And I truly believe for some people, the internet's like probably the last place. They're already active in their communities. They're already social. Like, I'm not really like that. No one in my personal life even knows I do this. They know me as a musician, which I'm still very active in, right? So my reality is very different than someone who's like, I really want to go all in on this thing. I'm active in my community. I hang out with a bunch of other moms, right? Like, this is a totally different circumstance, and that might be the window into which you get clients. But if you're not thinking through this, you're just like, oh, I get a coach certification, then I put up a website, and then like question mark, somehow I have clients and profit, let alone the amount of profit you actually need to like run your life, right? It's a whole other it's a whole other ball game. So I feel like that's the missing piece often, is this, even how do we architect, how do we think our way through a framework to become someone that has clients, even knowing who you are.
Yeah, yeah, I think that is the framework, because when you talk about the past, Evan, you talk about, and that makes me laugh about the the website, the fractal, and I don't even know what that is, but like I know what you're talking about, and that's how it used to be. And I think about how we're still operating on a framework that actually doesn't even exist anymore, and that we think we can go to school, and then we just go to school, and then we go to college, and then there's these jobs out there that when we just go and we get the jobs, and then we work a job, and then we retire, and we have all this money and everything's fine.
Yeah. My grandfather, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're acting like it's still true, and it's not. And so I think we're in this mindset, and I myself have been working through this in the past couple of years even. It's just like, that's not how it works. And so we're trying to take this old framework and put it on like an online business. As then like, oh, okay, I'm gonna open a business online. So I'm gonna open a website, like a website is like a store or something, like you said. Like a website is like some kind of storefront. And then somehow people are gonna be driving by and see you.
Hmm.
It's that easy. And I think so many people who are like really skilled coaches that I know, they're like amazing at what they do, and they have so much to offer, and they have so much to give. But they don't know the framework, and I didn't know it either until I got into it. And I've been doing
Yeah.
this for 10 years, and it's taken me a long time to figure stuff out, and I'm
Yeah.
still, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think that is built into the framework, is like that it is an organic, ever evolving thing, that you almost have to be okay with that being part of your life. It's not like, okay, well, I built my system 10 years ago and now it's set and forget, right? There's a certain comfort factor with, yeah, this is a constantly evolving thing. This is something I'm going to have to revisit regularly. And I don't know that there is like a framework, meaning like, here's the 3 steps you follow. But I mean, you and I have had thought throughs, and we have a course of sorts of our own that does walk people through the thought process and the emotional work of it. But even when we're creating that, we know we can't say like, you and I, as far as I know, at least in our project, would never put out marketing like, well, just follow these steps or duplicate what we did, and you will just have clients. It's not a real thing. And one of the disservices is that is very heavy in the marketing in this space right now, is like, follow these steps and clients will be knocking down your door, or like, you're going to be listed in a reference where clients are just going to come to you. They're not. That's never happened, right? Like, but to even open your mind to like, wait, there is this middle piece, and I have to eventually tackle that and have to find either guidance or a series of guides, or my own, at least, way I'm going to tackle this on my own, to think through this process of, okay, all I have now is the skill. That's not to diminish it, right? But it's all you really have if you've gone to like college for music, like I did, right? Like my ability to play the bass versus people actually calling me for gigs, they're correlated, but it's not like, oh, I just called the college and found out there's this bass player, right? It's this whole years and years of process of like people getting to know me and building a reputation. So I already have that framework with any type of thing that earns money. I'm like, oh yeah, it probably takes 5 years before people even know you have a good reputation, because I come from music, where it's just like, oh, you graduated, oh, here's all these gigs. Like, it's insane. But someone who graduated with like a computer science degree, who got picked up by Google because they were phenomenal, might have a completely different worldview about this. And this is what you were saying, how it's easy, because I think many people are not self-employed, meaning like they've like me, who've actually lived your life for years, like paid your taxes, done all the like quarterly taxes, all this stuff as a self-employed person. I take for granted this entire thought process that's like, yeah, money, getting a client that's like step Z, right? There's like A through Y are all these other little pieces. And so knowing that such a thing exists and then having your way to think through it at all is like totally this interesting part that I think is under discussed. It's either sold as like just follow these steps, which isn't true, but I like to kind of discuss this. Okay, this whole thing exists. Now, how do you unpack it? What are some of the steps of it? I mean, maybe we could break it down or wherever you want to go with it. But yeah,
Yeah, totally. Totally. I'm thinking about what you're saying. Like, it's true. I've been like mostly self-employed most of my adult life, like since like 1998 when I became a massage therapist, which is, it's a profession for the most part at that time, especially that you had to just be on your own. So you're out there and you're looking for clients, or even if you worked at a facility, like say a spa or salon or something, but
yeah,
you're still paying your own taxes. You're still, having to do your own marketing, get your own clients, or you're getting a commission, so it's a completely different mindset. And so I've been doing that since 1998.
yeah,
So it comes naturally for me. But you're right. It doesn't always come naturally for everyone else. It's also different. Like the way I think of myself as self-employed now, being
hmm,
online is completely different than say when I was teaching yoga, had a yoga school, massage therapy, being in healing arts. But the online business world is a completely different ballgame.
totally,
So some
totally.
people I think that are coming into coaching, maybe and they're getting certification, they come from a background of healing arts already, but they don't come from a background of online business, which
Yeah,
is also a whole other world.
it is its own world. And I think, I mean, the more I think of it that way, is like that is a skill that has it has nothing to do with my ability to work with someone on their trauma. Like that is one skill set. And then there's like business and how, now, if I'm good at what I do, then that helps because then I think about ways to demonstrate what I do. And it becomes a little bit more about that. But even still, if I could be the best in the world at it, and that if you're super exceptional, there could be a certain amount of word of mouth and a certain amount of buzz, but that's really rare, even if you are incredibly great. So there's this sort of thought process of what is a mechanism through which I can either introduce myself to people who would want this service or um, put material out there in such a way that could reach the right people for me. I think that at its essence, it comes down to that, right? How can I put what I do in front of the right people in a way that they will actually build a relationship with you, which is a whole other thing, right? Like you see a lot of strategy. I don't know if it's strategy, honestly. I think a lot of it's just throwing stuff at the wall. But you can, if you're on social media, right? Like you'll see a lot of strategies, and it's like, oh, that graphic looks nice, or whatever. But it's not hard to see why. Well, that doesn't actually result in someone handing over like $150 or $100 to work with this person, right? Like there has to be more steps. There has to be more of a chance for this person to see that you're actually good at what you do.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, honestly, is that people really don't. What I've learned and what I didn't used to know is that people really do not care like how good you are at what you do. They don't care. I mean, they don't care like your background, and they don't care what certifications you have or what technique you use. Because that's the thing about, like you say, getting your message down so someone will pay attention, is that you have to learn how to speak to them about them. They
Yes,
have to be like, they want to hear about themselves. They want to
exactly.
know, how can you help me? Because I'm in a lot of pain. Like I have a big problem mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever. And I'm in a lot of pain. So like they need to hear that, oh, okay, first of all, I see you and I understand your pain. And I can help you with it. But they don't care about your background or what tool you use.
Absolutely. It's the result and the state of mind of someone looking for a solution to a problem, which I assume is pretty much all business, right? Even if not especially self-employed business, right? Like ultimately, what does someone need when they hire me for music? It's, well, they need a bass player who can what? Fill in the blank, right? And it's usually like the better gigs I've gotten in my life. It's because there's very specific check boxes, right? There's some where it's like, well, we need a bass player who can, you know, do all this jazz stuff on acoustic bass, but really sight read really weird, modern, difficult music and be able to do it with few rehearsals. So now that's a very niche thing where I might get a call for something very high level, um, even over much more famous people, because there's like, for that really specific thing, Evan's someone who can do that. And that's basically what it's come down to for some of the better gigs I've gotten. And I feel like it's establishing yourself either as, I can solve this problem for you, which means I understand your problem, I understand what you're going through, I understand what's needed here, and communicating that. Now, of course, in music, it's a lot of its reputation and demonstrating that you play. But I guess we could talk about what does and doesn't communicate that, right? So like what doesn't communicate that I'm sure you've seen a lot of, which would be one thing like doing a lot of posts, let's say social media on your Facebook account, which are mostly your own friends, who that might not really be an audience for you, right? So like you can trick yourself like, well, I'm making these Facebook posts, but first of all, like who's seeing it? Who's actually going to see those posts? Is it people who are going to actually pay you for sessions, right? That's a big thought process of like, where am I making my services known? And then what's another thing? Well, like I'm going to post about like the benefits of EFT tapping. Like, cool, but so what? In a way, like it's just like, oh, there's this thing that's really helpful, but that doesn't grab anyone's pain, right? Like if I'm hurting about something and I see an infographic that says like EFT can reduce stress by 20%, like that's interesting, that's helpful to your business. I'm not saying those are bad things to do, but like that in and of itself is not, oh, cool, like where can I give you $100 to do that with me? Like there's such a gap. It has nothing to do with you. You're talking about EFT. You're not demonstrating. You're not speaking to someone's problem. You're not telling a story. You're not showing yourself doing it in a context where people would want to watch it. Right? So all of these things really matter. And it could be the same information or the same post, but just where and strategically how you are doing it is something that makes people sign up to work with you versus just like, my mom is going to click like on it and it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, because I mean, reducing stress by 20% is great, but what we really need to say is, reducing your stress around X, Y, Z specific thing that I'm experiencing, like around raising my teens or around like having some specific kind of physical problem or, something like it's got to be specific. And I think that's where expert positioning comes in, is that is like, you have to position yourself as an expert on what because, your ideal client is always you a few steps behind you. And so you're an expert on whatever it is you've gone through and gotten good results, and you're on the other side of whatever that is. That doesn't mean you don't have few steps to go ahead of you, but the people that are a few steps behind you, they need you, and you know how to get them to where you are, like with less pain, maybe in less time or less suffering, and in a more joyful way. And so that's really
Yeah.
what it is. That's all it is.
Yeah. You know how to do it. You may have no idea how to communicate it, which I certainly did not. Right. Like that's a whole art form in and of itself. And that's what's often not thought of as like, oh, I have to learn this skill of communicating what I do, of communicating in a way that resonates with people or is relevant. Like, imagine someone is scrolling through a feed and you're there telling a story of like, yeah, I'm a mom with 3 kids, or a single mom, or like maybe the more specific the better, perhaps, depending on who you work with or who your business model is. And like, I just remember like waking up every day feeling like is the weight is all on my shoulders. And have you ever had this? And the kids are fighting with each other, and I just was so overwhelmed. I needed something like that could bring my levels down to be able to see a solution clearly. Or like my kids were fighting and I kept trying to react this way, but you know what? I found this way to really resolve things and center myself. And like you don't even necessarily mention the technique, right? But that's, oh, how did you do that? Right? Like there's going to be some intrigue in that. If it's just like you tapping, going like tapping is good for moms, it's just so abstract, right? It doesn't really grab anyone's, doesn't grab them by the shirt collar or something. Be like, oh, this is me, right? Especially if they don't even know what a technique is, right? We talked about this before. We see it so often. It's just like someone just sees you doing this on a reel or something. Like what is that? Right? People's attention span is real quick, right? So you're just kind of scrolling through. It's not particularly captivating to see someone doing this. It's just like, I don't know what that is next, right? But if the image is like, you pulling your hair out with like three kids fighting, someone else is gonna be like, that's me.
Yeah,
That's what I'm going through,
yeah,
right? So like thumbnails and stuff on YouTube, right? Like the more I learn about this stuff, it's like what showing somebody in that state, right? Like perfectionism or whatever it might be, right? Like it's just something to communicate that emotion. So somebody goes, oh, that's me, that's relevant to me. And then also, like you said, knowing your audience, we could kind of get into that too. But how could you do that unless you've if you don't know you're talking to like single moms with three kids or whatever, you can't make that story. You're just going to have this very generic, like EFT is good for stress, which speaks to no one really. Like, again, it's part of a good strategy because I'm way into EFT, obviously, but like that doesn't reach the person who's really in the state of like, I need a session with you. They might go, oh, EFT is interesting. Let me look that up. Right? But who's the best EFT person? And they're going to type it into YouTube and see like Brad Yates dominating every thing. Right? It doesn't necessarily help you get that client.
yeah. I think that's why, it's funny because my wife and I are having this conversation this morning, because she does copywriting and that's like her expertise. And
Hmm.
we were talking about how like people don't understand. They think copywriting is something that, well, either I've got to learn how to do it or I've got to hire a professional to do it. But the truth is, it is like one of the most essential things you can possibly learn for your business, not because you're going to be a professional copywriter, but because the process of learning how to communicate your message is not only essential for you to communicate your message, but for you to know, like you have to know it. And I've seen people not want to bother with the process. Like that's a lot of work. I don't want to have to sit down and figure all this out because there's like tons of free tools out there. You don't even have to hire someone to help you do that. You can download tons of these free worksheets to identify your ideal client. Who are you serving? Like, what are their pain points? I mean, that stuff's like ABC kindergarten stuff. So it's not that it's not out there for people to be able to access and use. It's just that it's like there's a block or resistance against just sitting down and doing the work to
Hmm.
get clear on it. And so that to me is like, before you make a website or print business cards or do anything, open your social media accounts, you should be doing this work and getting clear on this for yourself first.
Well, also, like, what could you even possibly tell a copywriter if you yourself don't know who you're speaking to? So if you tell a copywriter, like, I'm a, matrix imprinting coach, like, okay, like I guess they could look that up, but but again, like if, I don't know why I keep going to this example as podcast I was listening to, like a single mom with like a couple kids who's stressed. Now the copyright, I mean, imagine the difference in copy, right? Like it's not even remotely, it's two different universes. If you say, just talk about matrix imprinting, I'm a coach, and we see this all the time. You'll see a website, it's like, Mike Jones, matrix imprinting coach. Like Mike Jones does this. What is matrix imprint? It's all about matrix imprinting. It's like, well, who cares? Like I could just go to matriximprinting.com. Right? So even if you get a good copywriter, if you can't tell that copywriter like this is who I'm reaching, this is the result of matrix imprinting. This is the pain I'm speaking to. This is why I believe in it. This is who would see that and say, well, I need to talk to Mike, right? Like you can't outsource that because it's literally impossible for a copywriter, even a genius copywriter, like, if they go to your wife and just like, I'm a coach, make me great copy. You're like,
No, it's impossible. No, it's like
right,
that's like the thing is if you're like, and sometimes people work with me first, like to get the strategy down and to identify that stuff. But if you just went to her and you didn't know this stuff, you couldn't even fill out the questionnaire to even get it started because you have to
right.
answer questions you haven't actually really looked within to see what the answers are. And that's why people get so overwhelmed and then they stop. And that's as far as they go. And they don't ever move forward.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of what we're trying to convey is like, don't be. I mean, it's okay to be afraid of that process. You can work through that fear, but understand that it's not an optional process. There is no mechanism by which you just sort of sidestep all this and suddenly you have. I mean, let's not even talk just clients at all. I mean, if you want to talk about the amount of clients and continuing clients that you would need, if someone who wants to do this full time, I mean, you need a lot of clients. Like if you're talking about paying your own health insurance, paying your rent or mortgage, like all of this stuff, right? Running ads if it's the beginning and no one knows how to find you, like, even if you're getting 150 bucks a session, if you're doing a lot of those and nobody signs up for you and like, oh, I'm just going to take a session with Evan every week for the next 2 years. So there has to be new people coming in. And so you might get some clients, but there's just no way you're going to build too much of a sustainable, like growing business without going through these steps. So the sooner you just embrace like, okay, this is a very real thing. It needs to be done just like you needed to do whatever you had to do to get certified. It's just a necessary step. Just embrace it. It actually can be very interesting. You actually learn a lot about yourself. You actually learn a lot about how to communicate what you do. And it is kind of interesting. And it makes what you do more satisfying. It makes it easier to communicate ideas and practice communicating ideas. Like you're trying to become a better communicator, essentially.
Yeah, because I was gonna say we're making it sound like we're not really actually talking about why would you actually then want to go through all this and
Right.
have your own business? Because here we are sitting here talking about this, but like here I am still having my own business and I can't even imagine like not having this business. I can't imagine not being here and going back to say maybe working a job, which I haven't been an employee for a long time, but I can't
Mhm.
imagine. It's too rewarding to be able to do this work.
Mhm. Yeah. And understanding what you want and how it fits in, right? So I mean, I'm still very active as a musician and I haven't really slowed down. The world has slowed down in a lot of ways. And so some of the gigs I used to have, I'm not going to Europe like I was, years ago when flights were cheaper and people were bringing bands. So there have been shifts in it, but I also like, being able to occasionally say no to like a 4 hour gig that's kind of grueling and doesn't pay all that much because I have something else. Not that it's about the money, right? But so the point being, the way it fits into my life makes the strategy very different, and I need to know that, right? Like it's I get to have certain liberties, or I get to approach things a certain way that if I was going to say, okay, I want my entire income to come from like just doing sessions or doing coaching and tapping and emotional work with people, I would have to remap the plan somewhat significantly. But right now, it fits like there is other income. And so it doesn't need to all come from that. So I get to be the strategy I get to use gets to be a little bit different. And I don't have to like look at each session and be like, okay, well, 40% of that just went away to like taxes and my email platform and hosting and right. So all of it matters, which is why it can't be cookie cutter, but you have to be aware that this whole process exists and you have to have some way of tackling it.
Mhm. And I think it's important to mention mindset too, because to me, mindset's the biggest piece, is the mindset work and your limiting beliefs and what you believe is possible is the biggest part of overcoming the challenges.
Yeah. And that gets, honestly, that gets tricky because, we work, at least the things you and I do together are almost exclusively with people who are learning or are certified in some sort of transformational technique. The last thing we did had one person was like more Feldenkrais, a lot of tappers because our content has a lot of tapping in it. But when you're into that work, what will sometimes happen is like, well, if I just do inner work on it, then I can bypass all this other stuff, right? It's like, no, it's not that. It's not like, okay, so just visualize clients and then you don't actually have to come up with some sort of strategy or business plan. People use inner work and emotional work to be like, so I don't ever actually have to come up with copy, right? Like, no, you do the work so that you can overcome the resistance to doing things that just simply have to be done any more than like nobody's like, well, if I visualize, then I will never have to drink water again, right? Like, well, no, but if you're resistant to it, it actually becomes not a big deal. And when you do this kind of work, again, the process can be interesting, it can be exploratory, it can even be kind of fun and creative. But just the resistance around doing it can totally soften with the mindset, like, oh, I can't do this. Oh, business is too hard for me. Technology is too hard for me. All of that is super limiting. And then you end up doing stuff that just, it doesn't accomplish anything. And then
Yeah.
you're even more like burnt out.
Yeah. And I found that things that I've had resistance around that I've done mindset work around, that after, that's exactly what it is. After I do the work, all of a sudden, the thing I was resisting either just isn't a problem anymore, or it's easy. All of a sudden, it's easy, or it falls in my lap, or something. And so it actually doesn't remove that from the equation. It's just that it makes it easier or makes it happen in a way that I couldn't imagine. So
Yeah, I mean, we've had examples of that together, working with each other, where, on your side, where you're like, oh, this tech thing is really daunting, and it's just going to be this big project to move this thing, and I'm like, Nico, I could do that for you in like 30 seconds because it's actually just if you know this code, but like you could never know that. And then there's other things where like I wouldn't possibly know that aspect of it or how to talk about this or something with inner child work, and you like can explain it to me in 2 seconds. And so it's like, oh, well, the limiting belief was like, I have to figure this all out on my own, or I have to do this. Meanwhile, like there's people in your life or in your orbit who, like, no, to them, they know that it's actually not a big deal and they can show you something that you would never have even known to would be a solution to that.
yeah, except you can't see it when you're in a
Yeah.
state of mind, like you said, like it's too hard, or I can't get any help, or I never have any support, or I have to do everything on my own. And those are all inner narratives. And you can't actually, you literally can't see any other like state of being until you shift that. And then all of a sudden you see, wait a minute, there's this help over here, or wait, Evan can help me with this,
Yeah.
and then you can actually receive the help. It is misleading to think that mindset work means you just visualize it and it drops in, and it's just not that simple. Because I mean, and to speak about the mindset work too, just like the visualization, is that to me, visualizing an outcome has to do with, going way past the hows of it happening.
Hmm.
You go to that end scene where you feel yourself into that experience, but we don't know how we're going to get there. And so it doesn't mean we just sit there and visualize and then poof, it's there. But there's actions that we end up taking that lead to a result that we did feel in our imagination.
Right. Yeah. And so, different solutions appear to you. A book appears to you. This video, like opens a door to you think, oh, okay, I can strategize this in a different way. And because like I said, a lot of these things, they're just literally a blind spot, in my opinion. Everyone who's listening to this, who's gotten a certification in something or is skilled, If you can do that, you can do the stuff we're talking about. You're absolutely capable of doing it, and almost by definition, you're capable of doing it because we're talking about the self-discovery process of, okay, well, what do I have to offer? Like, who would hear it? What's a way they could hear it? What are the platforms that would make sense for me to actually logically be able to communicate to them in a way that they would say, I want to work with this person. And that process, the more clear it is, the more it makes sense. So I have all of these things that I do now that they're just my to do, but I forget sometimes that I invented those. Like they came out of a pretty thoughtful process, and it's not something I did by myself. I got, help with it. You've helped me with it. We've learned about it through helping other people do it. Me putting up a YouTube video every week is not random, right? There's reasons why that works for me. And I could get into that if you think that's interesting, of like why I chose that and why I do things the way I do them.
We should definitely do another video on that.
Sure.
There could be a whole other video, because you and I could sit here and talk for like 2 hours, but I don't think anyone's going to watch a 2 hour podcast.
Yep.
But why don't we go ahead and just close with what's one thing that someone who's watching this can take away from it and actually use it to move forward?
Yeah. For me, the biggest thing is to just have a map in your mind that there's you could call it step one is I've learned the skills of I actually could help someone with a problem. And I'm quite confident that anyone watching this can be helpful to someone in some way. Now that's step one. There's a step two, which you might not even be thinking about. You've never had anyone break it down or give you practical steps to think through it. But there is this other middle section of, okay, what do I offer? Who would that help? What is a way they would actually resonate with it? How would they see it? Right? Let your brain start thinking about those things rather than just constant skill building, like more certifications, which is all step one. I'm going to become a better coach. I'm going to learn more about EFT tapping. All of that is one. That doesn't improve step two. So spend time thinking about step two in these logical questions. I'll say them again. Who could I help right now? What's a way that I could actually reach them? That's so different than I should post on Facebook, because you have to logically look at, okay, is this post I'm putting on Facebook, who's going to see it? My friends. Do they care? Maybe. But what am I posting? Am I saying oh, this technique is great, it helps reduce stress? Is that going to grab someone who's in the thick of it, who will then, that there's a pathway, right? You have to build a path between this is my skill, step one, I have the skill, and they're actually saying, I want to give you money to help me with this. So rather than saying this is how to do step two, I think just letting your mind really have that model, I need to think about this. I need to think through this. I need to spend time on this. I probably need to spend much more time on this than I do on the fun part, which is the skill building of oh, I learned a new technique for working through trauma and stuff. That's the fun part.
Right. I love it. Yeah. So I think that's good to leave everyone with, because, we're going to think through that and, get clear on that. And then we'll do another, interview and we'll talk about what's the next step after that.
Yeah. And we actually do have a free thing we made that's still up if anyone wants to watch it, which does go through our particular framework of how to get clear. And it's a totally free workshop we did. It's on my website. I think maybe yours too.
We'll put the
so you could put a link in the description.
Yeah, we'll put the link in the description. Definitely check that.
That's just one approach.
Mhm.
But thinking through that this is something I have to learn one way or another is, I think, where it's at.
Yeah, so we'll definitely keep going with this conversation, because I enjoy it and I hope some people get something out of it. And thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Evan, for being here as always.
My pleasure. Yeah. Thanks for having me.